The Bengals waiver claims have arrived in Cincinnati and have gone through their first practice with the team. That and some minor roster updates and the feel of the locker room as week one is rapidly approaching.
Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Liscow. He's your host, James Rapien. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you coverage of your Cincinnati Bengals every day, free and available everywhere you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Thanks for subscribing, thanks for following, and thanks especially to all of you who make us your first listen. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. James, we're going to get started today with the new guys, Max Scharping, Tufele, and Devin Asiasi, present and accounted for at Bengals practice on Thursday. The waiver claims awarded to the team on Wednesday. They found their way to the city and were ready to work with the team. What stood out with the new guys? I saw some fun videos of Scharping driving driving the sled, I should say, in offensive line drills with Frank Pollock at practice. Anything stand out with the new guys?
Well, the first things first, right? Max Scharping, all eyes on him. That's the guy that, of the three, it feels like could have the biggest role potentially this year and maybe line up as that, sixth offensive lineman and back up multiple interior spots, wearing number 74 for those that are wondering. But yeah, I mean, he went through some drills during the open portion of practice. I took a video and tweeted it out of Frank Pollock kind of coaching him up and teaching him some technique stuff. But nothing really stood out. None of these guys talked. So that's the first thing. It's not like they met with the media yet. Figured we'd let them get a little settled. I think it's going to be a whirlwind weekend for them as they, try to ramp up, learn the playbook, get accustomed to the language, the verbiage, all of that stuff. Because I do think that the Bengals, and of course they claimed them, think that these guys can contribute. Now, that doesn't mean that they're going to be playing a bunch of snaps week one against the Steelers or anything like that, but I think all three guys could certainly be in the mix. And did spot all three in the locker room. Max Scharping, first thought, big dude, just really big dude. Saw him from a distance, and you're like, oh, well, yeah, all offensive linemen are big. No, I mean, big for an offensive lineman, eye test wise. I don't even know what he's listed at off the top of my head, but that is something that caught my attention. The other thing, and obviously Tufele is going to be big. He's a defensive tackle, but Asiasi, he looks it, man. He doesn't look like he is not this thin tight end, right? He's, I would say that Drew Sample, even though he is a blocking tight end, pretty thin, chiseled, that type of guy. Same thing goes for Hayden Hurst, and obviously we know how athletic he is, and he is a pass catcher and all of those things. This dude, Asiasi, is just a big boy, and that's it's going to be fun to see how they use him, because I do think that he can help them in short yardage situations and obviously on blocking downs, and he does give them some Drew Sample insurance. So we went over it. I like all three additions. All three are here, safe and sound, wearing Bengals gear and practicing, and that's a good sight.
I think there's actually a role for Devin Asiasi in goal line packages right away too. Why, if you want to go three tight ends or you want to use two tight ends and you're going to run the ball and you don't care if the other team knows you're going to run the ball, why not put Asiasi and Drew Sample out there if you feel better about those guys blocking than Hayden Hurst? You can save Hayden Hurst some wear and tear and use him where he's better. And if you're not trying to be deceptive, which sometimes you just line up and the other team knows you're trying to run it down your throat, and you try to run it down their throat, especially with the right side of this offensive line, as we've discussed. Maybe there's a role there for Devin Asiasi right away.
Yeah, and the other thing is you do that enough, at some point you go play action.
Exactly.
And Asiasi just splits, just runs out there and he's just wide open. It's the offensive lineman eligible type play. And that could happen. Trent Taylor caught a 2-point conversion, right? And he was a practice squatter last year in the AFC title game. Like, there's going to be a moment this season where they need that. And that's the fun part. I think this team's better, and it was good to see those guys. Yeah, the other thing, should we hit on Cordell Volson now? Just a little bit?
I want to mention Max Scharping scored a touchdown once. You talk about offensive linemen eligible
Oh,
for a touchdown on play action. Our guy Mike Sands has a
uh-oh.
good tweet of Max Scharping scoring a touchdown, I think in college. But
There you go.
you
I
know,
think I saw that actually. You're right.
yeah,
Yeah. Not at
yeah.
Houston. Yeah.
The other quick note before we hit Cordell Volson is that you mentioned that all eyes on Sharping might be a big contributor. I don't sleep. I'm just telling our listeners, don't sleep on Tufele. The guy could be a rotational piece as early as week 1, and there was a lot of hype. You go back to his draft Twitter scouting report. There's a lot of hype around Jay Tufele, so I'm excited to see him play if he does get on the field right away.
Sure. That's the thing is I think there's a path where all three guys could contribute relatively soon-ish.
Which
And maybe,
tells you about like how much of a shot in the arm it is for their depth, right? Like all these positions where we're talking about depth concerns, and now you feel better about it.
You do. No, there's no denying that. And they were really dinged up at tight end. Now it doesn't feel as bad. And we can get a Mitch Wilcox update. He was in the locker room, no brace or anything on that ankle. I think he's making his way back. Didn't practice today, but certainly making his way back there. I guess we should hit on the other roster moves and then get the Cordell Volson after that. That would make more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the Bengals, by the way, do I do my victory lap now about Mike Thomas or later?
Do we need a victory lap for something that you're so certain about?
For sure, because beforehand, but before cut downs at all, when he got cut, I obviously said he was going to be on the team. There were a couple people, hey, he got cut, James. What do you think now? What do you think? I'm thinking the same thing I thought last week and the week prior. So, yeah, Mike Thomas was back in the locker room today, eating good, by the way. He had some shrimp, some salmon, some rice.
Obviously,
Joe
no
Burrow
vegetables, so you wouldn't say he was eating good.
I think there were some veggies mixed into that rice, but it looked good. There was definitely some color to it. It wasn't just bland rice. I'll say that. I was like, I even told him, I was like, man, some dudes roll out of the cafeteria with burgers and stuff. I was like, you're the one eating right. He had this big spread. It was nice. Anyways, it was good to see Mike back. And then the Bengals. What else did they do? They put a couple guys on injured reserve. They put Khalid Kareem on injured reserve and Cam Taylor-Britt on injured reserve. And by the way, Cam Taylor-Britt was in the locker room. Shirtless, looked good to me. But, I was like, hey, what's up? I'm adding that because it's not like there's like this big cut or something on him from the core muscle surgery, for those wondering.
Right.
That's why I added the shirtless part. But I just trying to be clear here for why I did that.
Yeah.
But fist bumped him and wished him well. I think he's going to be back. I would be surprised if he's not back week 5 if they need him. He's got to be out for 4 weeks. I think we'll see him week 5.
Yeah. And also not practicing today. You mentioned Mitch Wilcox and the players on the IR, of course. Isaiah Prince, Devin Cochran, and Tyson Anderson also not practicing. Cochran on the practice squad. Isaiah Prince, Tyson Anderson, Mitch Wilcox, all potentially IR candidates for moves that are probably still coming. They still got to get Brandon Allen and the other Mike Thomas back on the roster. And they're at 52, officially speaking, right now, because they put 2 on IR and brought Mike Thomas back. We'll probably see Brandon Allen and Mike Thomas, the safety, back tomorrow or sometime soon over the weekend. And then the activation of Jesse Bates will be required. So they'll have to make space for some of those guys. They do have one open spot on the 53 right now. But the good news, we talked about Drew Sample. He's still practicing. Eli Apple still practicing. So feeling a little bit better about some of those positions from a health perspective as the season gets closer. Coming up next, James, Cordell Volson spoke to the media in the locker room. We're going to talk about the locker room in general. And just in case you're thinking about leaving after that or something, Joe Burrow's out here playing ping pong in the Bengals locker room. And James is very excited to provide you his eyewitness ping pong recap. So we'll get there later in the show too.
But first, a word from BetOnline, because BetOnline.net is your number one source for all things pro and college football betting all season long, because football is here. College football season starts Saturday. A week from Thursday is what? It is Rams. It is Bills. Who's going to win that game? 3 days later, Bengals, Steelers. You got to get to BetOnline right now. You got to get in on the action. I've used BetOnline. I've made money with them. You can too. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your favorite sports and events, including Major League Baseball, MMA, boxing, golf, the NFL, college football. Don't delay. Go there now. BetOnline, where the game starts.
James, before we dive into Cordell Volson, we didn't talk about the 3 external guys the Bengals signed to the practice squad. We should hit those really quickly. Nick Bowers, we talked about him yesterday, tight end, spent a couple years with the Raiders. Yusuf Corker, University of Kentucky guy, I believe, rookie. And Marvell Tell III, who is a second-year player from USC, was a fifth-round pick last year by the fifth-round pick in 2019 by the Indianapolis Colts, and has played in the NFL in the regular season. So a little bit more depth there at corner with Marvell Tell. And this one's a little surprising. Instead of Trayvon Henderson, they go external with Corker. And so that one is a little bit surprising for me. And Bowers being the tight end on the practice squad's full. They've got 3 tight ends on the 53. So we can hit on OJ Howard real quick too, if we want, before we go to Cordell Volson. Do you think that's coming? Because the last we heard from Rapoport, he said that was still in the Bengals' plans, but it doesn't necessarily seem to make a ton of sense.
So I've been in the building now as we're recording this. It's about 3:30 the Eastern time on Thursday. I've been in the building for about 4 hours. I asked a couple of people, "Hey, you see any OJ Howard sightings?" I was like, "You seen OJ Howard anywhere?" And much like Joe Burrow yesterday, I got the same puzzled look that I got during the news conference. So no OJ Howard sightings. And I think that ship has sailed, if I had to guess. You get a guy in Devin Asiasi who's obviously healthy, is probably more what they're looking for of this blocking. Like, he's really, really good at something. I don't think OJ Howard's really, really good at anything now. I think he's an okay blocker. I think he can catch the ball, but I don't think he's a great athlete like he was coming out. And that's why the Bills moved on. And so the Bengals probably look at it younger, healthier, maybe more of a specialist in his role, but it's the role that they probably want to fill. And so, no, I don't anticipate OJ Howard signing with the Bengals, at least as of now. And I think that's a bummer because it's a former first rounder, right? At the same time, I don't think 2019 OJ Howard or 2017 when he came out, but 2019 OJ Howard is what they're getting. I think 2022 OJ Howard is much, much different because if he was still in his prime, he would have helped the Bills. So I think the Bengals were interested, and Devin Asiasi just happened to fall to 31, and the Bengals said, give him a little fist bump, and there you go. That's it.
Did you see the other tight end they put a claim on? Because they had a claim on another tight end they weren't awarded as well. So they had 2 waiver claims on tight end that I've seen reported. Did you happen to see that?
What was the other one?
I don't remember his name. That's why I was asking.
Oh, okay. There you go. No, I did not. I didn't see it.
They were one of 4 teams. I'll find it. Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is I do think that they desperately, not casually, they desperately wanted to address the tight end spot because Drew Sample's coming back. Mitch Wilcox is dinged up. You have Hayden Hurst, but you need someone else that you think can do everything that you ask a tight end to do. And so it could have been OJ Howard. There was a path where it was going to be OJ Howard, and there was a path where it was going to be Devin Asiasi, which is obviously the path they're down, and then insert whoever. I don't think this was we have to get Devin Asiasi and no one else. I think it was we have to address tight end. Here are the guys that we should put a claim in. We have the 31st overall claim. And then also, if not, let's control our own destiny and try to make a play for OJ Howard as well.
Which is a smart play. It was Trayvon Wesco, who is a generally reputed for blocking tight end who's played for the New York Jets. He ended up going to the Bears. So the Bears obviously much higher priority. Which,
by the way, aligns exactly with what Devin Asiasi is going to give them. And of them, if they're looking for a blocker, I think OJ Howard isn't necessarily known for that. Not that he's bad at it, because I don't think he's bad at it, but he's not like this elite tight end blocker. And I think Devin Asiasi could be that. So there you go. I don't think OJ Howard's going to happen. They clearly wanted to address tight end, and they were able to with a guy who they evaluated just a few years ago in the 2020 draft.
Yeah, interestingly, only 8 players. This is Field Yates. Just in case anyone's curious, only 8 players have multiple claims submitted for them. Trayvon Wesco is one of them. He had 4 claims submitted. The Bengals, obviously, if any other player that they claimed had multiple claims, they wouldn't have been awarded that player unless it was the Rams that were the other team that were doing the claim. But on Wesco, it was Cleveland, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Cincinnati. And in case you're curious, I know that it was the Jaguars with their number one priority who got Kendrick Pryor, but there were not apparently multiple claims on Kendrick.
No one
Pryor.
else.
For anyone curious, it was just one team. It was just Zach Taylor's brother, and that's why Zach Taylor was yelling at his brother.
And here's why I'm going to yell at Press for a second, because damn it, I told all of the Locked On Bengals listeners that he was going to go on. I basically said that he's going to go on claim. They're going to be able to keep all three. Freaking Press Taylor and the Jacksonville Jaguars have to ruin that. And so now I have to eat crow. So I'm with you, Zach. It's what a joke.
You go tell Zach, I got to yell at your brother too. He made me wrong.
Yeah. Give me Press's number, damn it.
People.
Yeah. What are we doing? I was one waiver claim away. Like, man.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
I mean, I was right there with you too. It's not just you. I mean, I'm out here telling
I know.
It's very rare these guys get claimed, but sometimes they do. And the Bengals did it 3 times this year. So, weird year, I guess, for waiver claims. Let's talk Cordell Volson. We were going to spend the whole segment on it. Cordell Volson spoke to reporters in the locker room, James, ready to face off against Cam Hayward and these Pittsburgh Steelers or what?
Yeah, he is. And I just love the way he carries himself. He's so, and Brian Callahan talked on today's Thursday, on Wednesday, about this after Zach had officially named Volson the left guard. And he's like, yeah, he may have that all shucks, happy-go-lucky attitude in front of you, but the dude is, and he didn't say dog, but he's got some nastiness to him, and he is a dog on the field, and he finishes plays and all of those things. And I like that. I like that, one, he can do both and be like, oh, it's good to meet you, man. Like, he's really soft-spoken with me, and he's twice my size and could pummel me. And when I shake his hand, it's ridiculous. Like, he's just a giant human. And but I think he's a good dude, and I think he works extremely hard and has obviously impressed his teammates. I'm excited to see him. And look, is he going to have some bumps, take some lumps early? Probably. He's going to have to adjust to this life of being a starting guard in the NFL. But he's clearly shown them more than Jackson Carman has, and shown them a higher floor, more consistency than Jackson Carman has. And so those are the things that I think they're obviously most attracted to. But no, I mean, he doesn't seem nervous about it. He kind of shrugged off the idea that he was, he won a job or was awarded the left guard job or anything. I was like, afterwards, after the interview, and I tweeted it out, but after that, I was like, so there was no award ceremony for you? There was no, introduction into starting left guard life? And he just laughed, a little bit. I was like, no, that's not how it works. I was like, hey, man, we've been talking about it for months and certainly weeks. That's so right. It's one of those things where you got to ask, but I guess they don't do that on actual teams.
What would you say to Joe Goodberry, who responded to a tweet, are the Bengals still starting a bottom 5 left guard? Joe Goodberry's reply, yes, that's likely. Think Scharping takes the job eventually? He's got a shot. This is an exchange with Joe yesterday on Twitter. Mm-hmm. What do you think?
I think that initially it's still, the biggest question mark on this offense
for sure.
For sure. I mean, you're talking about a 4th rounder from North Dakota State, 1 AA. Okay. That's the reality. That's fact. At the same time, do I think by week 8, week 9, they could have guard play that they haven't gotten at that spot consistently in quite some time, including last year? I think there's certainly a path to that too. Like, I think this kid, he's going to be thrown into the deep end, and they have, right? They've done that. And there's going to be times where he's underwater for a bit, but he's shown that he can tread water, and he's shown that he might throw a little freestyle in there, a little backstroke in there. And that's more than these other guys have shown. So could Scharping end up starting some games? Sure. Absolutely. I think he's going to overtake Carman at some point. I mean, you look at the numbers, he wasn't a bad player for the Texans. Nick Caserio, the GM, saying how bummed he was that they lost him. So yeah, I think I think there's a path to that, but I also am kind of bullish on Cordell Volson. One, because of his attitude, because of how hard he works, and he does have some good physical traits, even though he's not an elite athlete.
Yeah, I'm excited to see him play. He comes out of the gate with a firm test. I mean, there's a lot of good tests for this team this year, and I'm excited to see him play with a bunch of veterans out there too. I do agree with you, by the way, about liking the way he carries himself, and I fully believe Callahan and Pollock when they say that he's got an edge to him in the game. I mean, think about Trey Hendrickson, right? Nice guy off the field, blackout Trey. These guys can flip a switch. Maybe they flip a switch when they play ping pong as well, James. They've added a second table to the Bengals locker room, and I know you're really excited to give us the recap of today's events, which featured Joe Burrow playing with his teammates.
Yeah, let's dive into a little ping pong action. Ping pong, ping pong, ping pong. And I'll break down the game of Thursday, the game that was the most entertaining, and we'll do that in a second. But Joe Burrow, for the first time this preseason, this time during training camp, we get to see Joe Burrow on the sticks playing ping pong. You know why? Because the Bengals got a second ping pong table. I've had some ask, oh, man, there's a lot of ping pong going on in the background. Now there's even more because it's not one ping pong table. It is two ping pong tables. There also might be a poker table in there, but that it doesn't get as rowdy and you can't hear that. So as far as the ping pong goes, Joe Burrow versus BJ Hill.
Oh, yeah.
All right. What would you give and BJ Hill plays? I'll say this. I've seen BJ Hill play throughout camp and throughout the preseason. What would you put the BetOnline odds? Who would you wager on? Let's say they're even odds. Joe Burrow, BJ Hill. Who would you wager on in a ping pong game?
Man, you're going to make me bet against Joey B?
I'm asking.
As a rule, I've said, how many times on this podcast have I said, don't bet against Joe Burrow?
Okay.
Like in general, that's bad life advice. But I just have this feeling that BJ Hill is sneaky good at ping pong.
So who you betting?
BJ Hill.
Oh my God.
Yeah. I like BJ Hill.
You took the bait. You took the bait.
You got
Joe Burrow kicked his ass 7 straight games, I think it was. I mean, wow. It was just a beat down after beat. I was literally like, oh man, because Joe walked by with a ping pong paddle, and I'm like, oh man, is he going to actually play in front of us? Because I've heard he plays all the time, but we haven't seen it.
Oh, you didn't tell me that part.
What, that he plays all the time? Yeah, I kept that part from you. I heard that today. I really did. But part of it might be he was getting treatment and all that stuff. It's not like he, didn't undergo surgery a month ago. So, yeah, I think it was surprising to me how good he was. Not that I thought he was going to be bad. And BJ Hill would whoop me in ping pong, by the way. So this is not I think I'm good at ping pong segment. But
do any of them use like the grip that like the Olympic players use? Like not just holding it like it's a handle, like a tennis racket, but like the overhand claw grip kind of thing?
Some do. Yeah, some do. And I'll say this. The amount of times I heard 0.5, game 0.6, game 0.7.
To 11?
And then it's game. Yeah, and then it's game. Like Burrow would always be up, and then, BJ would get a couple points, and then he'd say, all right, another game. And it was funny to see Burrow's competitive side. We know he's competitive, right? Well, guess what? No one's on his shoulder on the field, right? We haven't had an inside look at some of the chess stuff. And so, like, BJ would, like, try to get a point here and there and exactly what I do. You're on your heels a bit. You're like, oh, no, that hit the table. And Joe's like, no, it didn't. Don't try that. It didn't hit the come on, BJ. That type of stuff. And he just wiped the floor with them. The last game he was up, I had to leave. All the reporters had to leave. It was game point to I think 5. And Joe said, all right, we'll play one more, because BJ kept asking, one more, which I understand that. And he said, we'll play one more, but we can't play for 2 days, at least 2 days, if that's the case. And so hilarious. So, yeah, Joe Burrow, pretty good at ping pong. I don't think that's necessarily a shock, But you bet wrong, my friend, because 7 straight games. Whoever took Joe Burrow on the pod would have, hit the jackpot because he
I
rolled.
just should have followed my own advice to not
Yeah,
bet
you
against Joe
should have.
Burrow. That's
You
good
should have.
life advice. You just,
It,
I mean, in all aspects, just don't bet against the guy. Do you think he's the best table tennis player in the Bengals locker room?
no, I
Give me your
don't.
top three.
So that's the fun part. Top 3. Trent Taylor
Okay.
is a G.
All right.
Is a G. This dude looked like Serena Williams at the corner of the table, down, like rocking back and forth, and he can get low to the ground, of course. And he was going up against Mitch Wilcox, who's very good. I watched him beat multiple guys. He crushed Thad Moss today. And so my top 3 would be, in no order because I don't know, Cheeto, Mitch, Trent. Now, Burrow's in that mix. I've seen those guys play more. Trent Taylor, Mitch Wilcox, Chidobe Awuzie. I've seen those guys play more. Could Burrow end up being in that range? Sure. But it's BJ Hill. So I need to see him play against someone else. It was just 7 straight games against the same guy. A lot of these guys are rotating in and out. And so
I sense a nice feature piece here when you're in the locker room. Start asking who's the best ping pong player in this locker room.
Well, I asked,
put together one of those, like, it's popular, those verbal histories of things.
Mm-hmm.
Like the oral history of Super Bowl, whatever, the oral history of some play or whatever. Do that, but collect all these quotes about, this is a great idea.
I asked Cheeto, and he named Mitch Wilcox as a guy. And that was early in camp when he said that. And I've watched Mitch, and he's really good. So those would be my 3. I just need to see more from Joey B, because it was against one opponent. If Trent Taylor to me was, I haven't seen a ton of Trent, but he was on today. And Mitch even said, he was like, "Man, you're on fire today." So I don't know if Trent was just feeling it, if it was his Jordan moment or what, but he was balling. I mean, and he beat Wilcox. So
certainly something that we can keep an eye on this year.
Oh, man.
That was
fun.
Open locker rooms will continue, right? You're going to be in there all year.
Yeah, in the fun part to me, because spoiler, I'm competitive.
Mm-hmm.
I suck at ping pong. Never really played it. So not even a little part of me wants to be like, oh, I want to get in. It's the opposite. I just want to observe and watch. Just, oh man, this is good. Like, this is, so it's entertaining, of course.
Yeah. Well, when we don't have football to talk about, we can always update the ping pong power rankings in the Bengals locker room, but there will be plenty of football to talk about when we're back next week. We are taking a day off for the holiday on Monday, so there won't be a Sunday night episode. We'll be back on Monday night, and we'll be with you for the 4 days next week, leading in to the Bengals Week 1 contest against the Pittsburgh Steelers. We got crossover Thursday starting back up next week with Chris Carter, everybody's favorite Locked On host, here on the Locked On Bengals podcast, so we can look forward to that as well. Until next time, Bengals fans, thanks for listening to the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.